And of course, I share that with the UN Women team, who has been of incredible help and assistance to the Bureau and chair myself in taking forward the agenda and program of work for this year's CSW. I was saying earlier that there are a lot of, I will be briefing a little bit on the negotiation process, but wanted to say from the outset that there are a lot of challenges associated with the virtual negotiation formats. We haven't done that. It's something unprecedented at this large scale. Even during the General Assembly session, when there are a lot of resolutions, decisions to be negotiated, the overall mood was not to go into the reopening of the text and negotiating long documents, but in the circumstances, and the constraints that we have virtually, the idea was to keep the text as were before, which is not the case with the agreed conclusions now, and all the negotiations are being held virtually. And of course, as every year, the Commission aims for a short and succinct and action-oriented recommendations for steps and measures to be taken by governments, relevant intergovernmental bodies, mechanisms, and the United Nations system, and all relevant stakeholders, with a focus on closing gaps and accelerating the implementation of the agreed commitments. This year's priority theme is central to the Beijing Platform for Action, which includes a critical area of concern on women in power and decision-making, and women's participation and decision-making has been addressed in all past agreed conclusions and political declarations of CSW. The facilitator of the negotiations of the agreed conclusions is the vice chair from the Asia Pacific region, representative of the Republic of Korea, and he has presented the text to the member states on 5th February. So more than 40 delegations and groups submitted inputs to the draft presented by the Bureau, which is organized in a preambular and in an action-oriented section, as well as closing section. The preambular section included references to the existing global normative framework, highlights gaps and key challenges related to priority theme. The so-called chapeau identifies governments and other actors that are expected to take action. The second part contains specific steps and measures to ensure women's full and effective participation and decision-making in public life, as well as the elimination of violence. The recommendations are taken from the report, are mostly taken from the report of the Secretary General on the priority theme, as has been the previous practice. The closing section has traditional paragraphs on the Commission's role, the role of the UN system, and of course, the role of UN Women. The draft addresses a broad range of issues related to the enabling environment, including education, healthcare services, including sexual and reproductive health, decent work, social protection, violence against women and girls, the role of social norms and gender stereotypes, as well as specific contexts such as conflict and humanitarian crisis. It also includes several paragraphs focused on the role of civil society organizations. The text is, of course, addressing the impact of COVID-19 as well, and also climate change. There are many delegations participating in the informals, including the groups of countries. but of course individual delegations as well. So the informal negotiations started on the 24th and 25th February and will continue until agreement is reached in a time for adoption of the agreed conclusions during the in-person closing session to be held on 26 March. And as we speak later on, the negotiations will continue on several still outstanding paragraphs. So thank you again very much for your interest and for your constant interest in the CSW related and matters, including the agreed conclusions. That is that much that I would wanted to share from my part, and would want to hear also your comments and issues, concerns, if there are. And I was saying earlier that look forward to the occasion that we can have also physical meeting at the UN, hopefully this time. Absolutely. This year, rather, I should have said. But back to you, Huri.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. Now I want to give the floor to Lopa Banerjee, Director, Civil Society Division and Executive Coordinator of Generation Equality Forum, and a steadfast partner to NGO CSW New York. We appreciate you, Lopa. And let's hear from your what UN Women is seeing and feeling, and then we'll open the floor for questions. And thank you, Ambassador, for that brief introduction on what's happening.
Thank you very much, Huri. Thank you, Ambassador, and good morning. Greetings to all who are on this call. Thank you so much again for your steadfast partnership, leadership, and activism. We would not be here without you. And congratulations to NGO CSW also for the rich slate of parallel events. And I don't know whether the numbers are beyond 25,000 now, but it is magnificent that we have these numbers, and it also speaks to all of your investment in the United Nations, in what multilateralism can add in this world in terms of global peace and security and justice and rights. So we always say that the Commission on the Status of Women is the best representative of how much women and young people believe in the United Nations. So we are deeply grateful to you for that. Indeed, as the ambassador said, it is a strange CSW. Everything is virtual. But at the same time, I want to say that it is we are seeing so much energy, so much commitment, so much enthusiasm among member states. The general discussions, the statements have all demonstrated sort of deep commitment, but the recognition that we are at an inflection point post-COVID, and therefore the importance of the priority theme, given that women during COVID demonstrated such leadership, and the fact that that leadership remains informal in that they are not at the table in terms of decision making in stimulus packages post-COVID. 80% of negotiations around packages of recovery do not include women at the table, when in fact 70% of frontline and healthcare workers were women who were responding to the COVID. So it is a critical issue. It is part also of the fact that if we are talking about building back equal, it is so important to have a CSW that focuses on that. And in that sense, indeed, the discussions, the side events, the high ministerial, the interactive dialogues, all of that are paying particular attention to that. So there has been a very really rich slate of discussions around this. Civil society has been engaging in spite of all the challenges, but also this has provided a new way of engagement and is teaching us new ways to actually also collaborate. So that there's been a lot of very positive, and we went into this CSW apprehensive because we didn't know how we would manage 2 weeks of virtual discussions, but it's been very affirming and very inspiring. Of course, I will not add to the ambassador's words as far as the negotiations themselves are concerned. And yes, let's hear your questions. And of course, we depend on all of you who are also, many of you who are part of national delegations, who are engaged in the negotiations. So yes, let us hope for a strong outcome hereafter. But also to say it's been an exciting and learning CSW in many ways. I have been part of CSW since 2011, and so this is a learning CSW for sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Lopa. I just realized we have the same anniversary. 2011 was my first CSW. We'll have to celebrate that together. Thank you for your words. And I know we have a very hard stop at 8:45 for both of you. So I want to jump right in to get some questions. I really have been reading in some very interesting, especially with about girls. Ivy, perhaps I'll give you the floor because I know you've been following closer to the questions, and then you can read out the questions and then each person will answer. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so I'm seeing a lot of overlap, so I don't want to read. Some of these are quite long, but I'll do my best and try to capture a synopsis here of some of these. But definitely there's concern about the topic of girls and language on violence against girls and it being omitted. And can you give us reassurance that this will be included in the negotiation, particularly as previous CSW themes have included GBV against girls in the theme? And to lose it at the state would be a significant setback, and more concern about girls, and we would recommend a strong commitment to girls. This is, of course, one of the BPFA critical areas of concern. And with COVID, we have seen the impact on education, issue of child marriage, teenage pregnancy. More on, we have also the concern on widows. It has not been mentioned. There has been accepted language about widows in recent agreed conclusions. The Africa Group has put forward a comprehensive proposal on language to recognize the urgent situation of widows worldwide, whose numbers have been increased recently, not only by COVID, but also wars in Afghanistan, Syria, Kashmir, etc. So will language about girls and widows be included in the agreed conclusions? Was there any text introduced on the importance of ensuring women's participation in decision-making related to conflict prevention and resolution, as well as peacekeeping? And are states negotiating for greater adherence to decisions on international or regional tribunals, which recommend action upon hearing women's assertion of rights? Do you want me to keep going? There's a concern about practical concern about time zone. Of course, you know, most of the world, especially Africa and Asia, I think it's a very challenging time that the CSW is taking place. And that inequalities must be recognized, especially with the digital divide. And you know, which is pretty obvious in the global South, especially living in rural communities. And there's another additional question on the issue of sovereignty is being introduced as a means to limit the scope of human rights for all women and girls. Sovereignty has never been introduced to the CSW agreed conclusions in this form before and would represent a serious precedent, which is contrary to the human rights instrument. Can we be reassured this will not be included, and what can civil society do to prevent it? I'm going to stop there. I'm sure there's a lot more. I just haven't caught up yet.
Mr. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Rian. Thank you, Avi, for these questions. Of course, the negotiations are still ongoing, and I cannot prejudge the outcome, of how they will go. But one thing I want to reassure our audience and the civil society community that from my part, Bureau and the facilitator are doing everything within our mandate, within our power, to make sure that we have a strong and action-oriented outcome. Of course, women's inclusion in peacekeeping and the reference to their activities related to the conflict resolution is an important element. You touched upon the issue of sovereignty, and that is some states see value in having this provision included in the text. Others have certain reservations about that, and this is part of the ongoing negotiation process. And thank you for making your views known on that matter as well. I have with me also colleagues who closely follow the negotiations. Aina, if I missed some of the questions, time zone, I marked. Yeah, it's important, and we're having, and I will be having later on to chair the general discussion, the general debate, and of course we employed a hybrid modality for different time zones, either by way of live communication virtually or pre-recorded for those regions that are in a different time zone. If I missed anything,
is there something specific you want? You think the ambassador should address? Otherwise, Lopa, do you have anything to add to all the questions about the girls and the widows and the
girls and widows?
That's right. Is there a mention of that?
Ambassador, do you want to comment on the girls and widows before I come in?
Well, as I said, yeah, I don't want to go into the specifics of the text, but those are the important provisions that we need to make sure that they are adequately reflected in the agreed conclusions. But please, Lopa, go ahead.
Okay. Colleagues, just to say, absolutely, many of the issues that you're raising are, are being discussed, and as the ambassador said, negotiations are ongoing. Just to say that, indeed, just to also mention that, you're right as far as the issue of sovereignty is concerned. You're right; it has not, in the previous agreed conclusions, come into the text. But I would like to remind colleagues and who've been part of negotiations before will remember that this has come up in previous CSWs several times. The issue has come up. It has then been negotiated and, addressed in terms of has not gone into the text. But the issue has been at every CSW prior, or not every, certainly several CSWs prior. The issue of sovereignty comes up repeatedly. With regard to girls, yes, again, as the ambassador said, there is every effort to be as comprehensive and inclusive in the agreed conclusions, as forward-looking, as high as possible in terms of, particularly now in the response to COVID. That said, in specific areas where, for example, just to give you an idea, in the CSW that dealt with the world of work a few years ago, again, there was the issue of girls because, talking about girls meant that you were promoting child labor and so on and so forth. So in some of these issues, when you're talking about women's representation, because the issue of violence against women and women's representation is is linked, that's where the issue of girls comes in and becomes more contentious. But that said, the issue of violence against girls remains on the table and will be part of the negotiation. In terms of some of the pieces around digital and so on, this is in the agreed conclusions. This is in the draft. This was in the zero draft. It has continued to be. This remains an extremely important issue, again, particularly in the aftermath of COVID and the world that we have seen over the past year. So it is on the table. It is under negotiation. It will be continued. It will continue to be negotiated. So these are the issues that you are raising are all central to the negotiation, and like in negotiation, this is, it goes back and forth. The effort is to make sure that it stays, but as the ambassador said, it is hard to give assurance at this point in time. Intention is fully there to make sure that it is as progressive as possible, including on the issue of widows and other groups as well. There's also the issues of widows, certainly also other groups to be included. There's always the question of listing that comes in, who will be on the list, who will not be on the list, and therefore language to ensure that it is as inclusive as possible. So yeah, I mean, just to say that all of the issues that you have raised remain central, but also to remember that what ends up in these negotiations, for example, around the conflict prevention and the reference to the tribunals, there's always the effort to say, these are different commissions of the ECOSOC, and therefore what is within the mandate? Is tribunals within the mandate of the CSW? Those become the discussion points. But again, the importance of women's leadership and conflict prevention remains center stage, and the effort will be among states to get the best possible outcome there. Over.
So good to hear the intentions are there and that you're all working to represent us so well. Ivy, let's do a whole, I see so many great questions here. One more whole round of,
Yeah, there's so many. So again, I'm not going to literally read through everything because that would take too much time. There is I understand that the term human rights is being challenged. Can you clarify this? There's a rise of women in crisis in their 30s and 40s. Is there a way to insist a corporate program for women in crisis who can get trained or get placed in a job? Are there re-entry programs for women coming back after a break? Are there such, wait a second. There are re-entry programs for women coming after break, but there is not much programming for widows and abandoned women. There's unequal share of care responsibilities. Is this, are excluding women from participating fully in leadership roles? Is this addressed? Has this section regarding Indigenous women proposed by Canada been included? And here, I'll just read this one. My suggestion for everyone involved from, I'm thinking this is CSW, NGO CSW to the high level dignitary, so everybody, to also include trans women, elderly women, and the LGBTIQIA+ community with regards to gender-based violence in the vocabulary of our events and documents, as some of CSW agenda items do not have a distinctive, items do have a distinctively binary vocabulary in the gender context. Is there a provision in your document about mental health and women and girls with disabilities? And 1325 Security Council resolution, is it being taken seriously? Because of Northern Ireland women when it has not been implemented there. We need to ensure that equal and safe access to education in all its forms, both formal as well as informal, remain a focus for the agreed conclusions. And girls and women in science, STEM, how is this considered? And ILO Convention 190. What has happened? Is it in the document? And I would like to highlight the need for the language to be inclusive of the LGBTIQ community. This is mostly critical in our MENA region, where the various conflicts are also encouraging retaliations against this group, and killings are taking place. And what about mothers? Many women in the front line of COVID recovery are also mothers. And again, about the childcare, and UN has a convention on the, when will the UN have a convention on the treatment of animals? That's.
I just want to jump in, Ivy. I'm sorry. I know you're doing such a good job making sure we don't miss anything. And I'm looking at the clock. We're going to, we have a hard stop at 8:45 for the ambassador. And
I'll stop here. I think that's all.
But I want to add two more things that I saw important, because I know Marian had her hands up and she wrote it down. And then also about migrant women. I know I saw Eva's message as well. And yeah, oh my gosh, now I lost Marian's comment. I'm so sorry. But yeah, there's a lot there. And then you're right, there's a lot of overlap as well. So yeah, financing for gender equality, that also can actually be very relevant. That's Marian's question, and care sector and the caring economy. Ambassador and Lopa, I hope that was as we could make it for you.
Well, yeah, it's a very broad amplitude of questions, I should say. But thank you for the interest in that specifics too. Of course, the negotiations, I have to repeat myself, they're ongoing, and there is nothing that agreed yet, because we are within the UN, and the delegates, they are also operating under this notion that nothing is agreed until everything is agreed. So we cannot prejudge what is currently in the text and what would be its final outcome. But as I said, we want to make sure that it is as progressive as possible. But we have to keep in mind that the negotiations are being held among the entire membership, and of course there are some cases that balance and compromise needs to be employed in order to make sure that we have a consensual document, that a document that is acceptable to all member states, not only those who want or who wish to see a particular strong language in specific areas. Education, financing, disability, they are all there. The specific language is still being negotiated, but of course the importance of significantly increasing the investment to close the resource gaps for achieving gender equality and empowerment of women and girls is in the text. The importance of education is in a specific sector of the draft, and there is a good deal of consensus on that. Migrant women, I marked out. Yeah, that's another important provision that we want to make sure that we see a stronger language in the agreed conclusion as well. Lopa, if I missed any points, please.
No, Ambassador, you did not miss anything at all. I just want to say that it's always, you, the Bureau, the negotiations, the facilitator are working in a very challenging environment. Diplomacy is when you are able to sit across and talk to people and negotiate in a different way. It's a challenging space to negotiate. That said, all of the issues that colleagues have raised are in the document. They were in the document at the beginning. They have remained in the document. The negotiations are on those issues. So it's not as though anything that you're raising is not in the document to start with. It is all there. The question is now how much of it, in what shape and form it stays, how much of it is strengthened, and frankly, what gets dropped out. That's also the truth. I mean, we know we know these negotiations and what happens. So there's also that aspect. But that said, the effort to keep it focused. And I do want to say, I saw something on the chat. I do want to say this campaign of Unmute CSW65 that civil society has started and that member states are supporting is a wonderful initiative, and congratulations on that, and a shout out to that, as you know, and the ambassador and the executive director of UN Women have been pushing continuously for CSOs to be included in national delegations, and this kind of thing with other member state support will really support this going forward. And we know that when CSOs participate in national delegations, language strengthens. So thank you for that.
That is such a good recommendation at the national level, and more than ever this year, we recognize that and encourage that with our advocacy and research as well. Well, we have only 2 minutes left, and I'm just wondering if the ambassador has any final thoughts that you want to impart to this amazing group of civil society, engaged civil society.
Lopa reminded me about very important issue that brings CSW home, and that is a point that we were highlighting also with our national authorities. And here is where I would also encourage the civil society partners to reactivate their activities also on the national stage, because a lot of things that needs to be implemented. We have the right documents. We're trying to have better documents, better framework, better. But at the end of the day, it comes to the implementation, and the implementation mostly also lies with the national authorities. So when we're bringing CSW home, the civil society partners, can encourage, press, push the national authorities in charge to make sure that those commitments that are taken are implemented properly. So that's from my part as concluding remarks, and look forward to re-engage with you also at next occasion, and hopefully we can, very hopeful that we can have a strong text, but as I said, we need also to have this in a way acceptable to the large membership, and it requires sometimes balancing, but we want to make sure that this balancing is not at the expense of the empowering of women and girls. Thank you, Uri.
Well said, Ambassador, and thank you again for being our champion, and we will hold you to that. Hopefully maybe we can reschedule another meeting next week if possible. I'm not going to guarantee it to anyone, but we appreciate the effort after all the hours that you're putting in. Lopa, before Ambassador leaves too, would you like to say something? I know you both have to leave.
Thank you very much. No, I think the ambassador has said it all. I just wanted to respond to one thing that I saw in the chat, which was about the Africa Group recommendations. And just to say that, regional group, the regional meetings that take place ahead of CSW, the Africa Group recommendation, the LAC recommendations from the regions, these are really important discussions that happen in the regions prior to CSW. as part of regional preparatory meetings. They did not happen in all regions this year, but those that they did, they always add to the negotiations and to the value of the negotiation. So they are certainly on the table as the negotiations proceed. Thank you for that, and thank you to everybody for your sustained championship and for your continued engagement, even through these difficult times, with delegations as they negotiate.
Thank you. I just want to add one quick thing, and then you definitely can leave. I'm so sorry that I'm very excited because Monday morning, NGO CSW in the regions are having a civil society briefing specifically on this. We're bringing the partners of civil society in the regions with UN Women to come and talk about how are we, like what you just mentioned, right? How we're using our power from the national to the regional to the global. So everyone, please come and join us Monday morning at 8 a.m. for our civil society briefing with the NGO CSWs. And finally, thank you. Good luck today. We are with you. Let us know how we can help. We will share the text and all the recommendations with your teams so that you have it, ready. So thanks again, and we'll see you soon. Bye, Ambassador.
Thank you.
Bye, UN Women. Okay, so as far as civil society, I'm going to change my view to gallery so I can see you all. We have exactly till 8:55. So if anybody wants to, has something burning in their hearts they want to talk about in the chat, I don't mind opening up mics. I always like to hear voices and see faces. We have 8 minutes. I hope you were able to take what was really important here, that both Lopa and her team and Ambassador Margarian and his team are on the side of civil society. They are listening to us. At least that's how I've been feeling from day one. They accepted our recommendations that we got. So at this point, as he keeps saying, it's like he can't say, it's almost like when you're in court, right? You can't talk about the case until the case is resolved. But it's important that they hear the reaffirming, the reassuring of what civil society wants from them. Ivy, was there anything that you wanted to bring up? I know ILO 190, we did mention that, something that we want to acknowledge from civil society's voice.
I think we're good. If someone has something, their hand raised, or.
I see Marian hands is still up, but we did bring your question about finance. Do you want to take there's another hand. Okay, so Marian, do you want to take the floor for like 10 seconds? Because I want to make sure, because once I start giving, I don't want to be, I want to have everybody have their voice.
Yes, I'm just wondering when we get the new draft third version.
Yeah, we're all waiting for that, and we're asking our friendly governments to share it with us. This is what I say always. Sometimes, somebody gets it before we do, and then we share it, right? So if anybody gets their hands on it, it's also important to see how the negotiations are going. Lavanya?
Yeah, hi everyone. This is my first time and I'm excited. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Virtually, I'm so much happy to connect with you all. As the founder of nonprofit, I was handling and supporting lots of families in crisis. We could see a rise of abandoned women and widows, and their life is turning upside down. So I have a request, like, is there a UN Women or CSW can insist on corporate programs to train such women who is facing crisis in mid-30s and 40s, because they excelled in college, they are toppers, but they didn't work for more than 10 years. There are re-entry programs after a break, but there are no programs for widows and abandoned women. Yeah, that's a request.
Thank you for bringing that up. I have to say, even though we mentioned this earlier as well, good news is that this topic is coming up a lot. So when it keeps coming up, that it's eventually going to be heard, right? And sometimes I get frustrated. I go, why do we have to keep repeating? And it works. I see Francesca's hand, but I also want to make a comment here. I saw a young girl representation. I want to make sure that a young girl has the floor as well. So if anybody's here prepared to make a comment, I know we got the working group on girls recommendations yesterday, which we also shared. I want to make sure that there's representation across the board. Francesca, are you representing girls?
Not girls specifically, although I believe in UN terms, I count as youth.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
This is just a kind of a quick question to hear from other CSOs and yourselves about improving participation. It's fantastic to hear Lopa so positive about our ability to input, but we know that one of the barriers with online negotiations is it's extremely difficult unless governments are so inclined to get that kind of outreach. Has any other CSO found a particular strategy very effective, or does NGO CSW have any particular guidance? Because we're able to get that information in before negotiations, but during the negotiations, where in many instances it's most crucial, it can be very challenging.
I need a 30-minute response to this. I mean, I can tell you this. We've been learning so much in the process of organizing this virtual platform, gathering all of you, and I'm sure some of you know, struggling with keeping you on the platform and making sure that all your events are perfect and the names are in the right place. So, you know, all of that actually applies to the fact that the intention is there to make sure that the civil society voices are amplified over and over again, and that we find a way to get our voices into the room. And that is a big problem, right, during the negotiations. But I have to say, we've been experimenting with something you might have heard called Vienna Cafe, which is like, you know, meetings in the sidelines. All of those experimentations are teaching us different ways that we can provide that, right? And also very excited about, oh my gosh, my brain, I'm already, it's 8 a.m. and look at me. But, you know, we're seeing some positive responses from friendly member states, right? We met with Canada, Australia, and those are really our allies, and that's how we get our voices into the room. So if we're physically not in there, we're using our allies to get our voices in there. Liota. Oh, Niradzi, I'm sorry, I forgot her too. Okay, let's do 30 seconds each. Liota, you first, and then Niradzi. And Lavanya, please lower your hand. You already spoke. I'm like a bad teacher here.
Hello, I can't have my video on since I'm a minor and it's being recorded, but I'm one of the GSUSA delegates, and since you were asking for girl perspective specifically, I wanted to chime in. In the conversation with girls we've had this week, the topics that are really, really being emphasized by our representatives is how important it is to have us actually actionably in the leadership in ways that is very inclusive. And I know that getting girls in leadership is very tricky, but that we need to be 100% part of the room and treated as equals in these spaces. And then other topics that we've brought up a lot include gender-based violence against girls, making sure that the language specifically pulls out the issues as they affect girls, and it doesn't just always refers to girls and women as the same group, because there's very distinct differences sometimes.
High five. I hope you can see my high five. I hope I didn't cut you off, but I'm going to respond to that quickly, and then Niradzi, you will be the final speaker. Good news. Phumzile herself is a complete girl advocate, and Generation Equality is making sure that girls' voices are being heard in that platform as well. So there's a lot of good news about girls, which obviously is a very close topic to my heart. And thank you for keep bringing this up so that it's not like, okay, we're done now, we're walking away. Another thing I wanted to just quickly highlight before I go to Niradzi, and that's final. I hope you all heard my comment with the Secretary General Town Hall. We are recommending as NGO CSW to make gender-based violence, violence against women, a consistent topic throughout CSW until 2030. And that actually, his response was really positive, and we're going to use that to advocate and bring that in. I think it is very important personally. And I'm sorry if I'm talking too fast because we really need to cut off. Niradzi, 30 seconds, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and congratulations for really hosting us and amazing forum that we are having. And also I want to thank Pumzile, as you said, and to congratulate her. And also, as you said, the generation equality, we need to recognize that. And at the same time to say, how do we therefore have the girls and SDG 5, which is a commitment on girls, in the agreed conclusions, because a commitment was already made on issues like child marriage and FGM. So that is already part of the SDGs. And we need to insist, and generational equality is coming. The last recommendation is, we must offer concrete proposals around the digital divide. Localizing CSW means the United Nations, the donors must put resources like money and infrastructure into the women's groups in villages, in communities, so that women and girls who are excluded can practically participate in the Generation Equality Forums and in the CSWs to come. So it should not just be about funding awareness meetings, but also funding equipment. And then connectivity is a responsibility of government, but we need practical resourcing of women's networks as part of a clear recommendation of that new normal that we are talking about. That new normal is digital, and is digital for all women, including those living in rural communities. Thank you so much, and again, congratulations.
Oh my gosh, thank you, Niraza. And I love how you just, brought that all together. And we really must leave because we need to get ready for a 9 a.m. meeting like everybody else. And I hope I wasn't talking too fast. I hope you all heard what we're saying. Let's meet Monday morning, 8 a.m. with the NGO CSWs in the regions. I think that's going to be exciting as well. Again, we only have an hour there. We're squeezing in as much as we can into everything. Thank you all. Thank you, Devin. Thank you, Ivy. And just let's pace ourselves so we can make it until next Friday, and see you on Monday morning, or actually later for our Play Ruined. I'm excited for our Play Ruined. Check out FW Map Exhibit Hall. Check out NGO CSW Exhibit Hall. We're having some amazing conversation circles. Okay, final word. Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Turn on your